My husband left me, and my life has become a living hell. Hi everyone, my name is Olivia. I had a hard situation in my life, and I would like to tell you about it. I hope this story will help you realize that there is a way out of any situation, and after a black streak always begins a white one. I was only 24 years old at the time, but I was already a wife and mother. My husband, Ryan, worked as an engineer for a large company, and our 2-year-old son, Jack, was the most important thing in my life. We lived in a cozy apartment on the outskirts of town, and while life wasn't always easy, we were happy. I thought back to how we met 4 years ago. I was in my second year of university, and Ryan had just graduated and gotten a job. Our acquaintance happened by chance at one of the parties of mutual friends. Since then, we've been inseparable. A year after we met, we got married, and a year later Jack was born. Life seemed perfect for me at the time. But everything changed suddenly. One night, while I was making dinner, my phone rang. It was Ryan. His voice sounded tense. He said he was going to be late at work because of a meeting and asked me not to expect him for dinner. I nodded, even though he didn't see it, and hung up. Nothing out of the ordinary, I thought. Ryan was often late for work, especially lately. But for some reason, this conversation had left me with an uneasy feeling. A few weeks passed, and I began to notice changes in my husband's behavior. He became more withdrawn, smiled less often, and sometimes even avoided looking me in the eye. One day, I found an unfamiliar number on his phone labeled Emma. When I asked Ryan who it was, he said it was a coworker. But doubts continued to plague me. When I tried to talk to my husband about it, he denied it. I was haunted by the feeling that something was wrong, but Ryan insisted that I was making it up. This went on for a couple months. I started to lose my confidence because of my worries. At one point, Ryan came up to me and told me that we needed to have a serious talk. He looked glum, and it made me wary. Suddenly, Ryan said he was leaving me for another woman. My heart ached. He'd confessed everything. It turned out that he had indeed had a mistress for months. He apologized, saying he loved Jack, but he wanted to leave me for someone else. I stood in front of him, feeling the world crumble around me. The divorce was long and painful. Ryan insisted on keeping some of the property we'd built up together. I agreed to all the terms as long as I could get the process over with. All I wanted was to put the past behind me and start a new life. I was alone with my child, I was supported by my parents, and I did not give up. I knew I had to be strong for my son. It was hard. Financial problems, loneliness, misunderstanding from others, all this pressured me. The divorce, which was dragging on a lot, kept me from relaxing. But I tried to hold on. I worked during the day, and in the evenings I did housework and took care of my son. Soon, however, something happened that no one expected. Jack developed a high fever, nausea, and weakness. At first, I thought it was just a cold, but the boy's condition worsened. The doctors made the terrible diagnosis of lung cancer. The world fell apart for me again. I couldn't believe it was possible. How do you deal with this? How do you explain to a little boy that he is going to go through a hellish ordeal? Treatment began immediately. Surgeries, chemotherapy, endless tests and examinations, every day was a fight for life. I spent my days and nights in the hospital by my son's side, supporting him and trying to stay strong. That's when the divorce papers came through, which were finally finalized. Now I felt my loneliness even more acutely. My parents suggested I move in with them to make my life easier. But I refused. I wanted to stay in my own city, where I had friends and a job. However, it soon became clear that the treatment would be complicated and would require large financial outlays, which I did not have. The hospital said that it would be necessary to go to another city where the treatment would be better, and then I decided to sell the apartment and go on the road. I packed my things, took Jack, and set off. The new city met us cold and unfriendly. We had to live in a small rented apartment. We barely had enough money for food and medicine. But the main thing was that Jack started to get better. After surgery and several courses of chemotherapy, the tumor shrank and the doctors gave hope. Slowly, life began to get better. I tried to work and support my son, but another disappointment awaited me. Only 6 months later, at the next examination, it turned out that my son's disease had returned with redoubled force. The hysteria came over me. It was like a vicious circle from which there was no way out. Things just started to get better, but life gives you new challenges. 2 more surgeries and another course of chemotherapy. I tried to do everything I could for my son. The treatments were exhausting him, and he didn't understand why this was happening, and I couldn't give him an answer. Finally, the disease seemed to really start to recede. I continued to work remotely to support myself and my son. But the stress of the last few months began to take its toll on my mental state. I became irritable, nervous, tired, and apathetic. One day a friend advised me to consult a psychologist. I was hesitant at first, because I always thought that I could cope on my own. But in the end, I decided to try. The first sessions were difficult. I cried, remembered the past, talked about my fears and worries. But gradually, I began to feel relief. The psychologist helped me to realize that I was not to blame for what had happened, that it was important to take care not only of the child, but also of myself. I started practicing yoga, meditation, reading books on self-development. I realized that it is necessary to live here and now, to enjoy every moment, despite the difficulties. Almost a year had passed since the move. Jack continued his treatment and his condition improved. He was no longer lying in bed all day, but running around the yard, playing with other kids and laughing. I changed, too. I learned to enjoy the little things, to appreciate every minute of my life. Work brought pleasure, and I devoted my free time to my son and my hobbies. One day, while walking with Jack in the park, I noticed a young man sitting on a bench reading a book. He looked up and smiled at us. I decided to meet him. As we chatted, we started to get closer, and later we started dating. George turned out to be a kind and considerate man. He understood what I was going through and supported me in everything. Gradually, a strong bond developed between us. George came to love Jack like a son. He spent a lot of time with him, helped him with his lessons, took him for walks and to the movies. Jack also became attached to George and started calling him Daddy. 6 months after we met, George and I decided to live together. We rented a spacious apartment in the center of the city where there was plenty of room to play and do activities. Jack grew up a healthy and happy child, surrounded by love and care. I continued my career by starting my own business. I organized online yoga and meditation courses, which were very popular. Clients left rave reviews, and the number of subscribers to my courses increased rapidly. This inspired me to continue to develop in this direction. George also found a job to his liking. He became a school teacher. He loved working with children, helping them to discover their talents and abilities. We spent a lot of time together, discussing plans for the future, sharing successes, and supporting each other in difficult moments. Time passed and life got better and better. We planned for the future, dreamed of traveling together, and maybe having a new baby. Every day brought new joys and discoveries, and I felt that life was finally back on the right track. But it wasn't all smooth sailing. Sometimes I thought back to my past relationship with Ryan and wondered if I had done the right thing by leaving him. After all, he was Jack's father, and the boy missed him. Ryan would call periodically and offer to meet up, but I refused. I was afraid it would ruin the harmony that had been established in my new family. One day Ryan came to town unannounced. He came to our house and asked to talk. I agreed, but only on the condition that the conversation take place on neutral ground. We met at a coffee shop. Ryan looked tired and depressed. He said he was sorry about the past, that he wanted to make things right with Jack. I listened to him, but made no promises. After that meeting, I thought about it for a while. Maybe I should give Ryan a chance to see his son. But how would that affect Jack and our family? I discussed the situation with George. He supported me, saying that Jack's well-being was paramount. If the boy wanted to see his father, why not? I called Ryan and suggested we arrange a meeting. We agreed that he would come to our house on his day off when Jack was home. The meeting went smoothly. Jack was happy to see his father, but a little wary. Ryan brought gifts and tried to make the time as useful and interesting as possible. They played board games, watched cartoons, and talked about school stuff. After Ryan left, Jack and I discussed what had happened. The boy said he was happy to see his dad, but he liked living with his mom and George. I promised that these meetings would happen regularly if Jack wanted them to. This meeting helped me realize that I had made the right choice in allowing Ryan to be involved in my son's life. Most importantly, Jack now has the opportunity to maintain contact with his father, and this will have a positive impact on his development and emotional well-being. Years passed. Jack grew up and became a teenager. He did well in school, played sports, and dreamed of becoming a doctor. George and I continued to build our relationship, supporting each other in every endeavor. Ryan also found his place in life. He married and had children, but continued to keep in contact with Jack. The boy respected both fathers and considered himself lucky to have such a large family. I looked back on the journey and realized that all the trials I went through made me stronger and wiser. I learned to appreciate every moment of my life and to be happy with what I have. And although tears sometimes appeared in my eyes, now they were tears of joy and gratitude for everything I have.